Universalist Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. Our mission is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. My name is Kelly Anderson, and I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. If you are a newcomer, please visit our welcome table in the fellowship hall, where you can find more information about our congregation and sign up to receive a bead and our weekly email newsletter. Also, if you'd like to be greeted as a newcomer after the service, please take a red mug, and members will seek you out and make sure you are warmly welcomed. A gentle reminder to everyone, as usual, if you have cell phones, put them into meditation mode so that we can put ourselves into meditation mode. If you have a restless infant or toddler with you today and need a place to take a break outside the sanctuary, we have an infant care room in the corner that you can access from the hallway, where you can still hear and see the service. It's right out there, over there. Our opening words were written by Elena Westbrook. In a world ravaged by violence, by hatred, by conflicts that seem eternal and insoluble, sometimes the only thing we can do is be still for a moment, to remind ourselves what is real. The sun that rose this morning, the dirt under our feet, the air whispering in and out of our lungs. This hour, try just to be present in each moment as it unfolds. Your simple attention is what makes these moments holy. Please join me in saying the words for lighting our chalice, and they're on the screen and in your order service. Let us walk with each other through the journey of life, attentive to the path and its challenges, illuminating the dark places and leading with the love.
Please rise and body your spirit to sing.
We've postponed our new member ceremony, so we're going right to the story. If there are any children who want to come forward for the story, please come up now. Everybody's on this side of the stage. I can adjust. This is the story story about two friends who were walking through the middle of a busy city together. And it was like really noisy. They were on the sidewalk and there were cars and buses going by. There were people talking really loudly. There was some construction project nearby, so there were jackhammers going. It was just as noisy as you can imagine it would be in the middle of the city, in the middle of the day. And one friend said to the other, "Do you hear that cricket?" And her friend said back to her, "No, I don't hear anything. And how could you possibly hear anything as small as a cricket with all of this loud racket going on all around us?" She said, "Furthermore, I don't think I've ever even seen a cricket in the middle of a city like this." But her friend said, the first friend said, "No, I'm sure that I heard a cricket just now." And they walked over to this big cement planter where there was a tree growing out of it. And they looked amid the leaves and the dirt by the tree, and there they saw a little brown cricket. And then they both were able to hear it. And the second friend said to the first friend, "How in the world were you able to hear that in the middle of all this noise and racket? You must have superhuman hearing." And the first friend said, "No, I don't have superhuman hearing. This is just something I learned a long time ago." And she said, "Here, let me show you something." And she took out from her purse some loose change, and she threw it on the ground on the sidewalk, and it made a jingly, jingly, jingly noise. And everybody within about 30 feet of them turned and looked at that change on the sidewalk. And the woman said to her friend, "People can hear things, but it just depends on what you're listening for." So that's something I want us to keep in mind, is that sometimes what we hear depends on what it is we're listening for. And if we're paying attention to the wrong things, then we miss out on some of the things that we could be noticing and hearing in our lives. So we try to pay attention to the things that are important and that matter. And with that, we will sing you out to your classes. Chitani is now going to give us an update on our stewardship drive.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm going to start today's discussion with a philosophical question. What came first, the chicken or the egg? If you think it's a chicken, anybody? Chicken? Few. Egg? The rest of them have no opinion. Okay. Now, how does that relate to the Canvas campaign? Good question. I'm going to draw a torturous analogy to kind of fit it. So here's how it fits, okay? We have to come up with a budget so that we know what our Canvas target is, okay? But in order for us to put together a budget, we have to know how much revenue we're going to have, which is how much money we're going to raise. So which comes first, the target or the budget? Okay. So the way it works is we look at the expected expenses, we look at how much increase we would like to have in some, and how much increase there is going to be on some, things that we can't control. And we come up with a total spend number, which is essentially a bottoms-up calculation. And on the revenue side, we look at how many members do we have, how many new members, what kind of increases can we expect to get, and we come up with some revenue target based on that. And then we try to marry these two numbers together, say, okay, this is going to be our draft budget for the year, and from that comes this number, $448,000. Now, what if the actual numbers don't come in where we expect them to come in? We have to go back and adjust the budget, okay? And we have to do that a couple times. So, as you can imagine, if the pledges are not coming in fast enough, we're not getting those numbers well enough, we can't predict where that total canvas number is going to be, we can't finalize a budget. And we have to keep going back and adjusting that budget. So far, about 40% of the people have made their pledges, which means 60% of the people have not made their pledges. And that's kind of tough to finalize a budget if we don't get those numbers in. So from your perspective, if you haven't made the pledge, you're thinking, well, you know, they know I'll be pledging like I do every year. They know, you know, I'm good for it. I'll do it, you know, when I get some time. You know, I just keep forgetting. But from our side, it's a lot of work trying to, you know, read the tea leaves and see where things are going. Also, what that means is 1 in 2, or more than 1 in 2, have not pledged. So look around you. People around you have pledged. You are the one who hasn't pledged. All right. So here's where we are. Total pledges received so far, $279,000. And it's 95 pledge units. So essentially 40% of the pledges have been received, and we're at 280,000. So we're sitting pretty well. 21 out of these 95 pledges, or about 22% received so far, are new or first-time pledges. So that is wonderful. That is really wonderful. Thank you, new members. Of the 74 pledges from existing members, 41 pledges, or roughly 55%, were increases. So well done. And the average increase is about 14%. So again, well done. Give yourself a big hand. It is our expectation that we should be getting about 142 more pledges yet to come in. If everyone pledges as expected, without increases, we expect to get an additional $199,000 in pledges. This will put our total at about $434,000, so somewhat shy of our target. So if the remaining pledges do come in with the amount of increase we are expecting, we should be able to meet the goal we have. And if they don't come in at that, and the total is about $435,000 as opposed to $448,000, we do have a contingency plan. We know where we can kind of squeeze the budget a little bit. However, we are getting together to finalize the budget next week. So if you can get your pledges in this week, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known, we shall be known, we shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these lives. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, it is time now that we cry, it is time we lead our souls into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now, and it is time now that we cry. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive in this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Good morning. My name is Diane Rush, and I'm a member of the Pastoral Care Team, whose task it is to reach out to members of Sunnyhill going through difficult life events, whatever they may be, offering the loving presence that binds our community together. If you want to get in touch with us, you may contact us directly or call the church office or send an email to pastoralcare@sunnyhill.org. Each week at this time in the service, we share joys and sorrows submitted by members of the congregation. We share the things that we are celebrating as well as the things that we are mourning, so that they do not need to be held alone. Joys and sorrows may be submitted online from our website or handwritten and submitted at the welcome table in Fellowship Hall. After each joy or sorrow that I read, please respond by saying, "We hold you in our hearts." I have an anonymous joy. What a joy it is to be part of a congregation with so many gifts and a willingness to share them. The most recent example is the new stained glass sun catcher of the Sunnyhill logo, made and installed by one of our newest members, stained glass artist Randy Green, who shed a lot of blood in the process. If you haven't seen the new sun catcher, it's hanging in the window over the stairwell. It is equally beautiful from both sides. Randy, it is a joy to have you among us. To Randy, we hold you in our hearts. And I have a sorrow. Bob Clevinger died on Monday. Jim mentioned him doing Joys and Sorrows last week. For those who didn't know Bob, he was a double lung transplant patient who moved to Pittsburgh with his wife and daughter to be close to his medical team at UPMC. They joined Sunnyhill just over a year ago. Bob's wife Amanda and their 12-year-old daughter Maya have a tough road ahead of them, and I'm sure they'd appreciate any gestures of support we can offer. Bob's memorial service will be held on Saturday, December 7th at 2 p.m. To Amanda and Maya, we hold you in our hearts. Let us take a moment of silence to bear in mind these joys and sorrows, as well as those that are held too closely to be shared. All that we have carried through the seasons of our lives has brought us here to this place, made sacred by our coming together. May we hold all that we carry in the warm embrace of this loving community.
According to a recent article in the New York Times, in the United States this year, at least 18 transgender people, most of them transgender women of color, have been killed in a wave of violence that the American Medical Association has declared an epidemic. The killings, which have been reported across the country, have for some prompted a heightened sense of vigilance. Many transgender people said they have hunkered down, avoiding meeting people they do not know, and sticking to places where they will have greater odds of staying safe. The Transgender Day of Remembrance, which takes place each year on November 20th, was started in 1999 by transgender advocate Gwendolyn Ann Smith as a vigil to honor the memory of Rita Hester, a transgender woman who was killed in 1998. The vigil commemorated all the transgender people lost to violence since Rita Hester's death and began an important annual tradition. I am lighting a special candle today to commemorate the Transgender Day of Remembrance, which takes place this Wednesday. On this Transgender Day of Remembrance, we remember those who have been murdered for being who they are, those who face violence on a daily basis, those who have lost loved ones, and those who worry for their loved ones. May we come to a time when we cease to shame children around gender roles and gender expression, where we allow for freedom and exploration of identity and expression into a world that operates from love, especially when things are difficult and confusing. May all of us who live with the threat of violence find support, strength, community, hope, and safety from violence. Please join me in the spirit of meditation with prayer. Breathe. Take a moment simply to sense breath coming in and breath going out. When you are struggling, breathe. When you are celebrating, breathe. When you are trying something new, breathe. When you are facing the same old challenges, breathe. When life is good, breathe. When everything comes unglued, breathe. Sitting here now, surrounded by people who care, breathe. in the silence of this moment, breathe. Breathe in the peace of this place and this moment. Breathe out the love that longs to be unloosed in our world. May we remember and return to this place of openness and breathing throughout all the moments of our life. Amen. Way back when I was in my early 20s, what seems like 2 or 3 lifetimes ago, I found myself at a crossroads in life. I had dropped out of college and was feeling completely directionless, and I had really no clue about what to do next. My sister was kind enough to let me live with her while I tried to figure things out. I needed to work, so I took the first job that I could find, which was as a cook at a Hardee's fast food restaurant in downtown Chapel Hill, North Carolina. It was a minimum wage job, and when I started out, I would say I was doing a minimum amount of work. I'd never worked in a restaurant job before, and it felt like I was always 2 or 3 steps behind what everyone else was doing and what was going on. In short, I really had no idea what I was doing. And one evening as I was standing around in a haze, my manager walked up to me, got in my face, and said, "The first thing you've got to do is wake up and pay attention." At first I was a little bit angry because that seemed somewhat insulting to me. But I decided to listen to him anyway because at the end of the day, I needed that job. So I started paying attention to what was happening around me. I learned how to read the crowd as they came in through the doors, how many burgers to start cooking on the grill, and how many baskets of fries to drop into the deep fryer. I learned how to get the necessary cleaning done in between rushes of customers. I learned how to check on supplies and stock up in order to be prepared for the next crowd that would inevitably come in. Now, when my manager told me to wake up and pay attention, he probably didn't think he was giving me spiritual advice. He just wanted to challenge me to start doing a good job. But I must say that his admonition to be more aware of what was happening around me was the start of something new and important for me. I started to see that no matter what kind of work was in front of me, no matter how humble or how grand it might be, I could bring a kind of focus to the work that would not only enable me to do a better job, but would also bring me into that moment and give me a greater sense of knowing what was going on both around and within me. It marked a new beginning for me. I did start doing a better job and was eventually promoted to the lofty position of assistant manager, which means you work more and they don't have to pay you overtime. And then eventually found my way back into college and finished my undergraduate education at the University of North Carolina. From that one small moment forward, my personal journey has been one of becoming more fully awake to this moment. And that journey of awakening and paying attention has intensified tenfold since I've been on the path of ministry. It's not always easy or comfortable to wake up and pay attention to what's going on around us, because sometimes what we see is just not so great. Sometimes we see things in our lives or in the world that desperately need to be changed. On the other hand, when we work to become more fully aware, we are also able to see great beauty that we would otherwise not see. But the religious journey is always one of waking up and paying attention. In an article in the New Republic, author and journalist Michelle Dean writes, "Not too long ago, I saw on the internet a photograph of a very small baby raccoon sitting in the middle of the road. And the caption read, 'When you realize you don't want to be responsible for anything anymore and you just want to nap and be small.'" Dean continues, "I have deliberately arranged my life so that I see pictures of cute animals on the internet every day. But I'm not usually seized by them the way I was by this one. The desire to abdicate, to give up, for me that's primal. Like anyone else alive right now, I spend a lot of days fighting off a flight response. Each day brings fear and fresh outrage. And though we all have these tiny little outlets of action in our lives, the internet posts and the petitions and the marches, no single one of them can fix this. She goes on, the world is on the verge of something. And one way to look at it is that we are climbing up the arc of the moral universe. But from our present vantage, it's very hard to see if it's bending toward justice, the way Martin Luther King said. Paying attention is the only thing that guarantees insight. It is the only real weapon we have against power, too. You can't fight things you can't actually see. Paying attention to what's going on, even when what we see is ugly and terrifying, is the only way we'll have any chance at all of bending that arc toward justice. And by the way, I can't help but mention that MLK borrowed that arc of the moral universe metaphor from one of our most famous Unitarian ministers of all time, Theodore Parker, who in 1853 said, "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure it bends toward justice." For both Parker and King, the arc metaphor was a statement of faith, a deep expression of an abiding belief that in the fullness of time, love and justice will triumph over fear and injustice. But what we have learned in recent decades is that the arc of the moral universe will not bend even an inch unless some force is applied. And it is up to us to apply that force. But we can't bend anything if we can't see it. And we can't see it unless we're paying attention. There is, however, a difference between paying attention to what's going on and becoming obsessed by it. So it is important to strike some sort of balance. We have to find ways of paying attention not just to the horrible stream of toxic news and the many daunting challenges in the world around us, but also find ways of paying attention to those small, sometimes hard to see, beautiful things in the world and in our lives. In other words, we need to find ways of paying attention to those baby raccoons too. The sweetness and joy, the goodness and the beauty that are a part of everyday living. Many years ago, there was a man who had given up on life. He no longer found any joy in his work, in his family, in his community. And one day he called out to God, "Please take me away to paradise." And to his surprise, God answered and said, Are you sure that you want to leave this place and go to paradise?" And the man said, "Yes, I am sure." And so God told him the way to paradise. And it turns out it wasn't as far away as the man thought. Just a couple of days' journey by foot. So he set out one morning on the road to paradise. He walked all day until the sun began to set, and he decided he needed to rest for the night. And so he lay down on the ground beneath a leafy tree. And just before he fell asleep, it occurred to him that he might wake up in the morning a little groggy and disoriented and forget which way he was supposed to go on the road. So he took off his shoes and set them at the roadside, pointed in the direction toward paradise. Something happened overnight. It could have been a small animal, it could have been an angel, who knows? But somehow the man's shoes ended up being turned around, pointing back towards his village. And so when he rose the next morning, he got up, jumped in his shoes, took off walking down the road, not knowing he was coming up on his own village. He saw the village from a distance, and he said, "My, paradise is so beautiful. It's beyond all my imagination of how beautiful paradise could be." He walked into the village and was amazed by the life and the joy that just seemed to be pulsating in that little place. He said, "My own village is so noisy and full of commotion, but this place is just filled with the joy of life and living." And he sat down in the middle of the square and took in everything that was happening around him, the noise of people working, the sound of children singing and playing. And later on in the day, he heard the sounds of families being reunited and the beautiful aroma of the meals that they were cooking together. And he found himself feeling a little bit hungry. And he said, in some ways, paradise looks like my own village. I wonder if there's a street like my own street in paradise." And he went to the place where he thought his street was, and sure enough, it was there. And on that street, there was a house that looked very much like his own house. And he was staring at it from the street when a woman came out of the door, and called his name and said, "Come in, your supper's getting cold." And the man thought, how amazing, they know my name in paradise. There is a place set for me at the table in paradise. And he came in and he sat down and he ate this soup that the woman had prepared for him. This woman who had a remarkable likeness to his own wife. And it was the most heavenly soup he had ever tasted. He complimented the woman on this gift that she had for cooking. And he went to bed that night and he slept better than he had for years and years and years. When he woke in the morning, he was a little surprised to find a woman standing next to his bed, handing him his lunchbox and telling him to go to work. He was incredulous. Work in paradise? What kind of heaven is this? But then it occurred to him that maybe there are tasks that need to be done in paradise as well. And so he went off, and he found his work, though, so much more rewarding. His co-workers were lovely, beautiful people who were so attentive to their work. And he came home that night to another heavenly supper prepared by the same woman. And no one could ever convince that man from that day forward that he was not living in paradise. Some people might say that this man was deluded, but I would say that he was awake and paying attention in a way that he had never done before. I hope and pray that we will learn to pay attention both to the immense challenges that we are facing as individuals and as a nation, and the great beauty that is already present in our lives, in the amazing world that's around us. For it is only in paying attention that we might be, in turn, paid back with invaluable insight about life and living. May it be so. Amen.
Please rise. Awake my own my senses.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth fall. Feel the deep power of being in awe. Keep with the web of creation your vow. Giving, receiving, as love shows us how. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor, both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end. Wake now, my vision of ministry clear. Brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our care.
Please be seated. We'll now give and receive our morning offering to support the work of this congregation.
Please join me in saying the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
As we part, do not fail to be surprised by the catching of your breath, the quickening of your heart, the fullness of your eyes, wide and suddenly awake. The world is filled with wonder, ready to be born anew. Do not fail to notice. Go in peace.